What's going on, everybody? It's Brad O'Brien here with the SnapCast podcast, joined by my friend
Zach Moeller.
Yeah, and as we like to say, we're sort of competitive, casual players that have a competitive interest in finance. Although I gotta say, the whole finance thing is like dissolving, and we'll actually get to a part of that later when we talk about a major MTG content producing vendor making huge changes, and it's all related. So, but what we talked about last week, actually the biggest thing we talked about, I think, last week was you had a big event over the weekend.
I did. Yeah, I had to simplify it, it was a 1K. They were advertising it as 1.25K. Right, 25K. But to simplify it, it was basically a 1K cash event. And there was quite a big turnout, bigger than a few people that I spoke to had anticipated. So that was pretty cool. And it was for a good cause, actually. Didn't mention it last week, but the event was hosted by Weekend Anime down in southern Maine, Westbrook. And they recently were trying to expand their store. They don't actually have like a play area to host events, even for their local crowd. And last year they had gathered the funds, they had gotten permits and everything like that to build it. And then they kind of got hosed by the contractor that they had hired to do this. And so winter was coming around and they finally spoke out about it. And they reached out to the community, the main community, to help kind of recoup some of that funds. And there's a GoFundMe page, which I think we can link to.
Yep, we can put a link to that in the comments.
But very unfortunate thing to happen to them. But this tournament has helped to kind of recoup that a little bit. So
I would say more than that. This event has helped to reinvigorate the fact that there might be a competitive scene in Maine.
That's also true. We have not had an actual competitive REL event since pre-COVID. So this was a step in the right direction. I hope there's more in the state of Maine. I'm actually going to be traveling to another one out of the state in a few weeks, but that's later.
All right.
But so Weekend Anime, go check them out on Facebook. Look for the link in the description in the comments, and if you can donate anything.
Description, not the comments.
Yeah, description.
That makes
comments,
sense.
Whichever.
But yeah, absolutely, we want to support them and recouping the loss that they had there. It was pretty well attended.
It was. There was 95 people total at the end of the day. I was expecting 50 to 60, maybe 70, and that was kind of the feel of the room that I was, from the people that I was speaking to. They kind of thought that same thing. Turned out to be a little bit more. So Bull Moose Music in Westbrook actually funded the prize support for this event. So
shit.
all of the entry fee costs and everything went directly to Weekend Anime. And we tallied it up coming home, and it was almost $3,000.
That's awesome.
For entry fees. So that money went straight to the fundraiser for Weekend Anime. And Bull Moose put up prizes for the cash event. They did a bunch of raffles for a few things from local stores to help raise money. So it was all really good.
All right. Without giving anything away, Zach didn't win.
I didn't win. Nope.
But give us your tournament report. How'd it go for Fish?
So there was 7 rounds because there was 95 of us. I finished 2 and 3, dropping after my third loss because it wasn't worth it to play out for. They had prizes for top 16 cool play mats that I was gonna try to shoot for, but I didn't get there. My rounds were kind of loosely red-black Loris, which we'll talk about later, because of things. Round 2 was Burn. Round 3 was a mono-black type mid-range deck. No discard spells, but Phyrexian Obliterator was played.
Oh, excuse me.
So that was fun.
Yeah.
And then round 5 was Tribelcher.
Yeah, I was wondering if we'd see that out in the real world.
That was the quickest round of Magic I've ever played.
Did they just have the nut?
They had the nut both games. I game 1 was under 2 minutes, and game 2 was probably also under 2 minutes.
So, just to take a financial tangent, like all of those modal double face cards, the MDFCs,
Yep,
they have value in every format.
they do.
And in a modern deck, that can win on turn 2, sometimes turn 3 a lot.
Yep, and that's actually probably, those cards themselves are actually probably what helped give birth to this new Charbelcher deck. Because ideally, you combo off with Charbelcher, you flip cards from your deck until you hit a land. But if all your lands are spells, you don't hit a land. Yeah. So you flip the entire deck over, you kill it. So,
yeah, I mean, I think we did a trade a while back, and I got an Agadeem's Awakening, the black graveyard recursion land, and I remember saying at the time, this thing's $20, and I mean, just there's a bunch of mythics, and they're seeing play in Modern, they're seeing play in EDH. Mm-hmm. I think there's something to not overlook, and if you're just sitting on a few, maybe keep sitting on them.
Yep. Give it a few more months, maybe a year, and see what happens with them. I mean, they're going to be played in at least EDH. So,
any other? So that's sort of what you played through. Any notable plays? Anything that you saw that was hip from your opponents?
Besides the turn 4 Phyrexian Obliterator, not really. The decks that I lost to, other than Charbelcher, was Loloris deck, and then I actually lost to Grixis Death Shadow in round 3, which I said I was going to dodge. Didn't happen, but there was rumors of a lot of Death Shadow in the room, a lot of burn in the room.
And so going back to what we talked about last week, you sort of called it as the things to beat. And burn is a given everywhere.
It should be.
It should be.
It's fairly cheap. People tend to have it, and people tend to gravitate towards it.
Yeah. So. We did have someone from our shop get into the top 8 and made a good run all the way up to the semis.
Yep.
K-Flag on Red-White Prowess.
Another take on burn, essentially.
Yep. Another take on burn. Really, wanting to play cheap creatures and get them swole.
Yep.
So
we also had a few other good runs from people at our shop that attended. Chris, don't remember his last name, but he's the youngest player at our store. Okay. He usually plays goblins. He was the youngest player probably at the event. He topped 10th. He got 10th.
What?
Jacob Dawson also top 16th, and John King also top 16th. So we had 4 people in top 16 from our local store, which is a really good performance.
Yeah, out of nearly 100 people?
Out of nearly 100 people, yep.
Yeah, and so that goes to show last week when we were saying that our LGS F&M meta is competitive.
It really is.
It really is. And I apologize for not knowing Chris's last name either, but he's definitely one of the small cadre of much younger players that have been at the shop now for a year or two.
Yep.
And he does not miss triggers. He understands his sequencing. He knows the math on the board all the time.
Yep.
Like sometimes after a game, he'd be like, well, 1 point here, 2 turns before. And I'm like, dude, you're thinking at the level that's going to make you a great player. So it's really awesome to hear him, in a 10th place sort of success, got some, maybe a playmat or something.
Yep.
Top it's just going to make him want to go back and do it again.
Yeah. And that's, hopefully he does. Hopefully a lot of us at the shop, the more experienced players can, make room for him in vehicles, stuff like that.
Yep.
Get him to events just like everyone else. Because he can't drive yet. He's almost there. But, a lot of us will carpool with each other, and we just need to make sure that we, get people around. So.
And, the You did call it, though, and I want to, again, give you props. This is only the second time ever being on a podcast.
Yep.
And, he said Grixis Death Shadow is largely the deck to beat. In the top 8, we had 6 individual decks and 2 copies of Grixis Death Shadow. Yeah. The winner apparently was a 4-color build, but we don't have all the information on that.
Yeah, we don't have. Unfortunately, the store didn't post deck lists or top 8 deck lists or anything like that, unfortunately. So I happen to have a mutual friend that is in that same play group as the winner. So
yeah, and our friend K-Flag that was going deep, I was texting him, harassing him the whole time. I was just thinking, man, I hope his phone doesn't die because I keep bugging him. But he was the one that sent me the list that there were 2 Grixis Death Shadow, 1 E-Tron, the red-white prowess that Kevin was on, 1 4-color creativity deck.
Yeah.
I want to know what they were playing for payoffs. A red-white hammer deck, which is unfortunately the deck that Kevin lost to in the semis, and an Esper Reanimator. And so it was the finals were red-white hammer versus
4-color shadow, apparently.
4-color shadow, apparently, and the shadow player managed to take it down, which makes 100% sense to me. I have no doubt that's how that matchup would play out, 80% of the time.
Probably. Yep. I can't speak from experience on either side of that, so just have to assume.
Yeah. Jesus, man. Death Shadow is basically a legacy deck.
Well, and that's kind of a good segue into what we want to talk about, which is the ban announcement that we just had a few days ago.
Well done.
Because Death Shadow typically plays with Lurrus.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, Lurrus is a legendary cat creature. It's a 3/2 with lifelink. Its colors are 1 generic and then hybrid black, white.
Yeah. AKA Orzhov.
Yep. But what it does is it actually restricts the conditions that you can build your deck with. You can only have permanents of CMC 2 or less. So any permanents in your deck can only cost 2 or less.
Yeah. Spells don't matter. Spells can
matter.
be 5, 6, 7 mana, but permanents have to be 2 or less.
And so with Legacy, a lot of the curve for Legacy is 1 mana, 2 mana spells. And that's basically what Death Shadow is. It's a lot of creatures and spells that are 1 to 2 mana, and just the power level of those cards is insane.
Yeah. You're talking about 1 mana, 3/3 flyers that give you card selection, and 1 mana, 13/13 sometimes, and all the removal spell and discard. So you have information and threats. Yeah. So let's talk about. So we didn't actually last week. We avoided the ban conversation at all.
Yep.
And then when we were talking about today's episode, we were like, well, do we want to do a speculation thing and sort of talk about what might be banned? And it was like, can't control it.
Nope.
It sucks to just be wrong. And I'll tell you, I probably would have been wrong. And so we waited for the BNR to come out, and now we're going to talk about it. But as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. Because there was no changes to the Modern format, which, Modern is technically in a good, healthy place right now. I will say that. There are certain decks that kind of gravitate towards the top of that list, like Death Shadow, all the decks I mentioned before last week. But it is a healthy format. Rogue decks can do well. This past weekend on a Magic Online event, there was a Crabvine deck. I don't know if you've seen it, Brad, but it's very cool. I might try it out in a league later on this week, but it top forward. So Modern is in a healthy format right now. It is in a healthy place, but people are kind of getting tired of Lurrus being attached to those decks.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of conversation I saw online. Actually, I think Jason Chandler had started a thread about the bans, and a lot of people were saying, I'm so surprised. I really thought they would do something. And I'm glad they didn't. Lurrus is everywhere, but Lurrus is in the red-white hammer deck. I'm sure that was likely a Lurrus deck. Mm-hmm. The prowess deck certainly could be a Lurrus deck. I don't know if Kevin played it, but he was on red-white.
I don't think he was.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what permanence he would have. Maybe Blood Moon in the sideboard or something.
Maybe.
That's speculation. And the Grixis Death Shadow likely had them. But there are all these different archetypes. It forces them to be lower CMC. But they're still all different archetypes. Mm-hmm. And I can tell from my personal anecdotal experience, playing Hammer, the number of times I've actually cast Lurrus is so infrequent.
Yep.
And yeah, in the games where I get enough mana and the breathing space to do it, maybe it matters. And then the person goes, "Oh, you only won because you had Lurrus." And it's like, yeah, you're right, but I only got to this state in the game because
right. It sat in its companion zone all game. So realistically, how good did it do you? Now I did actually lose to Lurrus. Like my opponent round 1, the black red Lurrus deck actually cast it both games 2 and 3, and it stabilized him. Like it was, in my opinion, it was the reason that he won that round. But
is that like a Croxa deck when you're talking about like red black
yes.
Lurrus? Okay.
I don't think I saw Crox's cast, but I can only assume it was there.
Yeah, but that kind of a deck.
Yep. And that was the reason it won him the game.
Yep.
Hands down. But it's just the amount of times that's actually going to happen, probably very slim. So
right, and maybe in that deck more often than in Hammer, because in Hammer I'm trying to go fast. I might not have 3 mana and 2 turns or 4.
Right.
4 mana, or not every Hammer player is even playing Baubles anymore, so you don't get to play it for 3 mana and get something for free out of the yard.
Yep.
But going back to the bans.
Yep.
Nothing in Modern means no real financial change for anything in Modern, except things are going up. Everything that people were afraid of getting banned.
Yep.
So Lurrus went up a little bit. Ragavan went up. Urza's Saga went up. All the cards that people thought, I'm going to hold off. This card could get banned. Didn't.
Yep.
And then all the bans that did, honestly, don't matter to me.
No, and they don't matter to me either. I don't know. Do you want to read off the other ones?
So go ahead.
So in Standard, there's Alrund's Epiphany, which was rebalanced in Arena recently because it was overpowered. Taking extra turns and making a couple of tokens was deemed overpowered. Divide by Zero, which to my knowledge is basically a different divination. Divination, pay 3 mana, draw 2. Don't know why it's banned. I'm sure it's a part of a combo somewhere in Standard. I don't play Standard. Don't care.
Well, and who does play Standard? And even WotC is like, let's... so it's the learn mechanic. So it's like a bounce something to somebody's hand and learn.
Okay. Yep. And it's instant speed, so that kind of makes a little bit more sense. But
yeah. But even WotC is saying, hey, we're going to create alchemy that's going to be, balanced Standard.
Yep.
So they're saying Standard doesn't matter.
Yep.
Why are they, in alchemy, they've balanced Divide by Zero.
Yep. Supposedly.
Yep. So why, I don't know. Continue, sorry.
When they created alchemy, I started calling this the second Hearthstone game for Magic Online for Arena because it's basically that. But that's something else.
And now Hearthstone is owned by Microsoft.
Yes.
But that's wild. What else was banned in Standard?
The last card banned in Standard was Faceless Haven, which is a colorless creature that becomes a 4/3 for a triple snowland activation.
Yeah.
There was a combo with it in Standard that I was aware of. That's basically it.
You could make it an angel, or you could make it something that said whenever this creature, as long as it has a counter on it,
you can't lose the game.
You can't lose the game?
Yep, because it has all creature types. Similar to Mutavault, you activate Mutavault. Mutavault becomes a creature with all creature types. This was the same thing. Became
Book
a creature
of
with
Exalted
all.
Deeds.
Yep. So, Faceless Haven with that.
Yeah, somebody tried that out in Pioneer as well. And I have to say, especially after our last conversation, I saw Pioneer everywhere this week.
Yep.
Like everybody was talking about Pioneer. So it was in the air, and I'm kind of actually a little bit more excited about it because I think that they are pushing it.
They are, and they're still going to be holding a big Pioneer tournament on Magic Online. So I think people are still in that mindset, which is why it's getting a lot more attention.
Yeah, Mana Traders was hosting one for sure that I know about.
Yep.
So that was standard. The next like arena format.
Yep.
Is historic. Memory Lapse had already been suspended, and they just outright banned it.
Yep.
Great. Who gives a shit?
Yep.
It's been suspended. We couldn't play it anyway. It's just a matter of language, like the word choice you use.
It's a more permanent.
Now you get your wild cards back.
Supposedly, I mean, they haven't even, from what I understand, even when they're rebalancing things, they don't give back wild cards. So
no. But if it's banned, I think you do.
Okay.
And then Teferi Time Raveler has been unbanned after a rebalance.
Yep. And I don't know if you've seen the rebalance. You should have if you read the article. But he basically went up 1 for generic mana. So he's now 2 generic mana, a white and a blue.
Yep.
I think the rest of his stats are the same. They changed the wording on his passive ability a little bit.
Yep.
Basically simplified it to say your opponent can't do things on your turn, period.
Yep.
As opposed to just your opponent can only do things at sorcery speed.
Correct. So they can they can respond at instant speed on their own turn.
Yeah.
They can cast spells while things are on the stack, that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And they also increased his loyalty, so it's 4 mana and it comes out at 5 loyalty.
Okay, I thought I saw that, but I wasn't quite sure what he started at originally, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the only paper format that was affected was Legacy, where Ragavan finally saw a ban. Now, I'm not a Legacy player. I know a little bit of it, but from what I gather, Ragavan died for Daze's sins, meaning Daze, the counterspell Daze, which allows you to Eternal Land instead of using mana to cast the spell, I believe.
Yeah.
Ragavan just made that better or something, and Ragavan died because of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I imagine because Ragavan is card advantage and ramp.
Yep.
Like having the treasures from Ragavan means you don't have to worry about bouncing your lands.
Yep.
That's my guess. And again, I don't play Legacy, so when I look at these, I dabble a little bit in historic.
Yep.
Like on the iPad in the bathroom.
Before bed.
Before bed, whatever. I might play a couple of games because there is an approximation of a green-white humans list that I like. But I don't care what gets banned or taken. Like, on there, the client does it all. I don't have to pull cards out of my deck.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to find new cards to put in my deck like I would have to do in paper. None of that stuff matters to me. None of the stuff in Standard matters to me. And none of the stuff in Legacies matters to me. And honestly, Ragavan still went up.
It did.
Because modern players that were holding off, like Dalton Adams from our shop said right on Facebook, I thought it was going to be banned, so I didn't buy them. And as soon as I heard it wasn't banned, I went online and bought 4.
Yep.
Because it's a great card to play, great card to have. I'm not advocating anybody run out and buy them right now, but I understand it. Like, banned in Legacy, price goes up.
It's backwards. I mean, Modern and Legacy, 2 different formats. The power level in Legacy, as we were saying earlier, is much higher than Modern. Ragavan kind of helps bridge that gap a little bit, and it makes the Modern decks that's played in a little bit more like Legacy.
Yeah.
So the price tag might be justified, but I mean, it's a steep price.
It's a steep price, and I think actually this is a good segue because one of the things that a lot of us are going to have to contend with is that Magic as a whole has changed drastically over the last few years of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. A lot of the big name organizations that surround Magic, and I would say even sort of like lived off of Magic, have had to deal with 2 years with no competitive play.
Yep.
And so we saw Channel Fireball go, where they were the sole licensed entity that would do Magic Fest. they created a whole separate company, Channel Fireball Events.
Mm-hmm.
2 years later, they're like, "Yep, we're not doing the GPs anymore. We're gonna shutter that company. We're gonna stop creating content. We're gonna become a marketplace like TCG Player. We're just, we're gonna do a bunch of other card games because they were all about that competitive scene, and the competitive scene pretty much disappeared with COVID. Well, Here we are. Was it yesterday that SCG announced?
Yes.
They are also getting rid of their paywall content. They let go a whole bunch of their writers and content creators, including, PVDDR and Jerry Thompson and, the sort of the best of the best in competitive play. And so to bring it back to like the price of Ragavan and what it is, the reason why so many of these cards had value was the tournament play. And so over the next year, hopefully WotC's going to announce a new organized play structure. They put Huey Jensen in place as the director of organized play. And in his announcement, he basically said that's everything from F&M up to Worlds or whatever looks like that.
Okay.
Great. By the time he gets there, there isn't going to be a Star City hosting events. There isn't going to be a Channel Fireball hosting events. No. Maybe Nerd Rage Gaming will still be doing some out
west.
Out west. But it really is going to be more like these weekend anime 1Ks that I think are going to have to carry us through. And at that point, do I want to spend $350 on Ragavans to go to the shop and play F&M?
Right.
Not really. And I guess, I have to decide what kind of investment I want to make in cards. Mm-hmm. So thinking about it, I really had this thought this week of a lot of this podcast over the last year and a half, whatever it's been, has been about speculation on cards going up in value and the collectability, and a lot of speculation is based on playability.
Yep.
And if there aren't places like Star City putting out competitive content and saying, here's how you go win the tournament, I don't know if it drives that price cycle of cards. So they literally said, and you brought up the article here, which is great, they're dropping everything, including the paywall.
Trying to scroll the other way, I guess. Yeah. I'm not used to your computer mouse.
And they said that they're going to come out with a whole new series of non-strategy tournament-related topics and going back to all free, no longer behind a paywall.
So, regardless of what they used to say in the past, their articles from their pro players, their content creators, it did, to an extent, drive single prices. If you had PVDDR, top 8 or do really well at an event at a GP, and he wrote an article about it, everyone that reads that article that wants to play at those competitive levels is going to look at that and say, I can buy those, and I can do the same thing. So what's that do? It then puts those people to go hopefully shop at their store at Star City Games to buy those cards. And with the pay cycle that they had with the paywall and everything like that, you had a membership, you usually got discounted prices for those cards.
Yeah, so you were even more incentivized. And you had with a lot of these sites, you have a deck list right there on the screen. You can just click on it.
Yep. Throws it right into your bag.
Yeah.
And they used to say, it doesn't really help drive these prices. That's wrong. Realistically it did, and everyone knew that. But not having this content anymore to go off of or to just even refer to is going to be huge. And huge in the sense that no one's going to want to do stuff anymore.
Well, and where does Jerry Thompson go? Who is he going to go write for? Cool Stuff?
Yeah.
Is he? I mean, how long does he keep producing a competitive Magic focused podcast with Brian
Gottlieb?
Gottlieb.
I mean, a lot of the people that are being let go at the end of March or beginning of March, whenever it is, they all have 5, 6, 7, 8 years of doing this content competitively for Star City Games, and now they're getting the boot, and it's going to be really challenging. It's going to be really hard for even us, the casual people, the people that are trying to play at these 1Ks, to just find content to consume because it's going away. Channel Fireball does a few things still with Magic related content, but they have definitely branched out more between the marketplace. They do other TCG games. It's out there, but we're gonna have to look a little bit harder to find the content.
And SCG may still do the SCG tour, but they've already said that they're not going to do coverage anymore.
Yep.
So here, Cedric Phillips is moving on to his own, whatever his next thing is.
Yep. And Patrick Sully also left. Him and Cedric left kind of at the same time, from what I gather. But Patrick seemed like he was already kind of out the door anyways. He was doing other game design things, but Cedric was kind of, to me, like out of the blue. But we'll see what happens. And
so between WotC basically saying they're not doing event coverage, SCG not doing event coverage, Channel Fireball no longer doing events, you're not going to have that. I mean, for the last 2 years, we've had Moto results on the weekends.
Yep.
And in some aspects, that has kept paper card prices still moving.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there was always this expectation that, eventually things will go back to normal.
Hopefully.
I just think that what we get back to is not going to look like anything that we saw 2 years ago, when the biggest sort of names in the events and coverage are gone. Yeah. So until, again, Huey Jensen might be Santa Claus coming down the chimney with a big fat sack of awesome events. And we'll get, and so I asked Zach actually this earlier, and I'll put it to him now that we're recording. Who steps up? Do we get more guerrilla coverage of events, like somebody in Vegas, Eyelash, the streamer Eyelash, did some guerrilla coverage? Are we going to get more of that? Is that going to be enough to keep people motivated?
I think it's going to come down to basically how long WotC wants to wait on actually committing to doing competitive events again. Nerd Rage Gaming, like you mentioned earlier, they're doing a bunch of series events. They're doing, they have events, I think, once every few months or once a month, and they do have some coverage. And then you have the individual people playing in the events will sometimes set up like a little guerrilla-like setup where they're stationary and they stream their games. But you're right, like that's going to have to carry us through until WotC decides to actually commit again to competitive play, which I don't think it's going to be this year.
Yeah. No.
The NPL, this is like the official last year for playthrough.
Yeah, they're waiting
so they have to go through this entire year just like last year with no guarantee for the future. And then maybe in 2023, hopefully at the end of 2022, we'll know. But WotC just doesn't want to commit to anything, unlike other games like Flesh and Blood, where they've been hosting events. I don't want to get into it, but if other card games are willing to do this, however they go about doing it for their players, for safety, whatever, there's really no reason WotC can't do the same thing, outside of whatever legal reasons they don't want to do it.
All of this said, from WotC's perspective, I understand that they've had banner years every year for like the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Like it hasn't slowed them down. They're still making money hand over fist. So much to the point that they took the Wizards of the Coast CEO and made him the CEO of Hasbro.
Yep.
Like, bro, has that money flowing, bro.
And a lot of that actually probably comes from the casual aspect of Magic, right?
Yeah.
So we do a lot of talking of the competitive scene and stuff like that and all these breakdowns, but realistically what drives this game is the casual players. You know, the people like you guys that are playing your kitchen table Magic with your EDH decks and your friends, you guys are really the ones that are driving this game. And I think that's been brought to the forefront because of the pandemic and because of, you know, all these events have been shut down for so long that they're seeing this growth because everyone is still playing Magic, they're just playing it at the tabletop kitchen table level.
Yep.
And I think that's unfortunately the aspect that they are just focusing on, and that's the direction that they're going to carry forward with.
Yeah, I think we need a Anakin Skywalker to be the evil one that brings balance to the Force. I think at some point, like, they have to realize that yes, they're going to sell cards pretty much for as long as they print them. But the most vocal, the people that create, I shouldn't say that because there is now more and more Commander-focused content out there.
Yeah.
But there really isn't casual kitchen table coverage.
No.
Right? So you have people that are talking about EDH. In the last few years, that went more competitive. CEDH became more popular. Like, There's definitely more coverage of Commander as a casual format, but I feel like WotC is definitely gonna be leaving something behind if they don't. Yeah. And to be fair, they have been really vague, but have said we're ending the MPL program. We will announce a new organized play structure. Huey Jensen has been hired to direct organized play.
Yep.
So they've said good things.
They have.
They have a plan. They're phasing out this other program first. We've hired somebody that everyone in competitive Magic pretty much respects.
Yep.
I mean, it's stupid that some people give him grief because he was friends with somebody else that made some poor choices.
Yep.
Like, are potentially terrible choices. I'm not defending
absolutely,
dude, but I don't want to be held accountable for somebody that I know. I don't even want to be held accountable for somebody I love. Like,
right.
I don't make their choices.
No,
and
you can't.
No. So I'm actually glad that WotC didn't hold that against him when there was a little public outcry.
Absolutely.
About it. All that said, I still have faith. I have faith, and I have cards.
Absolutely.
I have cards that I want to recommend to people.
Yep.
To snap up.
Yep. And I mean, that's why we're here, right? We're still playing this game, regardless of what's happening. We still love this game, and we're going to keep doing this. So, do you want to just jump into your picks for this week?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We didn't actually look anything up, but
nope.
I looked my stuff up earlier today, and I can tell you, I don't even have my notes in my pocket. Elvish Reclaimer is a card that you should seriously look at. It is being played in Legacy. Mm-hmm. It is being played in Modern. It is being played in a crap ton of EDH decks. It's, now, of course, I am going to look it up, because I don't want to read it wrong, and I want to make sure that I give the right price. Elvish Reclaimer. This card is busted. I've seen and so one of the things that I really like about this card is that it's in a janky Modern brew right now that keeps popping up. Mm-hmm. And that's what Hammer was until it happened.
It was.
That's what Scales was, Hardened Scales, before it happened.
Yep.
And I think that Elvish Reclaimer is a 1/2 for 1 green mana elf warrior. Has that same sort of pedigree. Right now, it's already almost $11. This is saying you can get light played copies for $7, near mint for $9. Mm-hmm. So you can get them for less than $10. This creature gets +2/+2 as long as there are 3 or more land cards in your graveyard. Step 1. Step 2. Pay 2 tap, sack a land, search your library for a land card. Put it onto the battlefield tapped. Shuffle your library. So that is this is what's going to make a lands deck in Modern happen, because this lets you instant speed, go get Bojuka Bog. This lets you instant speed, go get Urza's Saga.
Yep.
You know, you can do this in combat. You can if you have 2 lands in the graveyard, you can block with this, and then before damage activate it and make it a 3/4.
Yep.
I'm sorry, a 3/3.
No, 3/4. You're right.
It's 3/4
+2/2.
Yeah. So this card has a lot of stuff going for it. You're probably not seeing this on any competitive tables across from you right now. But I looked this up on MTG Top 8, which is a great site we've used in the past for looking at competitive events. This is in almost 1,200 registered tournament decks.
Wow.
On MTG Top 8. And it's in close to and again, I wish I had my notes from earlier. Elvish Reclaimer. We're going to look it up on
EDH Rack.
EDH Rack, right? This blew me away. It's in almost 12,000 decks. Right? So this card is seeing a boatload of play. This is a rare from M20, a rare from a core set. It's $10. I want a play set. I want a play set because I love the idea that a lands deck could pop up in Modern. But this is one of those cards that, again, it's $10 now. If this was in a Modern deck that was top 8ing, it'd be $20 overnight.
Easy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, with EDH Rec, seeing that it's in that many decks for EDH, it just shows how good of an EDH card it is. Because it can go into any green-based, mono-green, multicolored deck. It doesn't have to necessarily be a lands meta deck. It can just be to help with mana ramp, mana fixing, specialty utility lands. The fact that it says sacrifice a land to get a land.
Oh.
It's not restrictive like other fetch lands or other cards are. It's just straight 1-for-1, and that is great.
It's really good if you can tap it to sack a Flagstones of Trocaire. That's what you'll often see in Modern.
Yep.
They'll sack a Flagstones, put 2 lands into play.
Yep.
Life is good. And looking at the commanders that it's in, Titania, Lord Windgrace, Kadama the East Tree, Gitrog, Mina and Den, like a lot of lands matter commanders. But then you get below it, it's like Tatiova, Hogak, Arkalos, Azuri, like an Elf's deck. Mm-hmm. The fact that it's in 15% of all Azuri decks, again, that's not because it's an elf. It just fits in there and it has utility. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of Elvish Reclaimer. I want to get my set of these. I want to make sure that I have my set of Flagstones. I want to be ready to Knight of the Reliquary with this guy.
Don't give any hints to Sam. Sam used to play a Knight of the Reliquary deck, and I couldn't beat it. So don't give him any more reasons to play this. I do like the card. I've seen it a little bit in Modern to not great success, but if it's seeing play in Legacy, it's seeing a little bit of play in Modern, and it's seeing tons of play in EDH. It's only a matter of time. They're only going to print more utility lands. At some point or another, they're going to get one good that sees play across formats.
Yeah.
The only thing with it is if you search for a fetch land, the fetch land comes to play tapped. You can't activate the fetch land that same turn.
Yep.
But you're probably getting a utility land with it regardless. So
I just brought it up on MTG Top 8, searched Elvish Reclaimer, and we see it. And they list it as in Jund Sagavan in Modern, Dark Depths in Legacy, Elves in Legacy, Black Green Rock in Modern, in Dual Commander, Legacy in 12 Post, in Selesnya Depths, in lands, in Elves, in lands, in Modern, in Gruul Aggro. Like, random. But again, I love being able to go to MTG Top 8 to look for results, and you can see on here 1,174 decks have been registered on that site that have this Elvish Reclaimer. So, at least...
Okay, sorry.
I was just going to say, if you're somebody that likes to play green decks in Modern, might be worth trading into these.
Yep.
Even if you don't want to rush out and spend $35, $40 on TCG Player, you might be able to find them in a Facebook group for $30. Like if you're trying to wheel and deal or wait for a sale on TCG Player. But I'm excited about this card. I think it has room to grow.
And the foils, just to throw this out there, the foil price right now off TCG looks like it's 13. So if you're buying them for $13 or closer around there, and you can buy foils for around the same price, you might as well just get the foils. Just saying. Not to influence people with
very
foils.
Good. It's very good because I have fallen off the foil train.
Yep.
So it's good that you're coming on the cast now and preaching the good word of foil Magic cards. What have you been looking at this week?
So I've come to realize that a lot of the picks that I'm probably going to be doing are going to be Modern based because that is the format that I play the most. It's the format that we play the most. Those prices don't fluctuate a lot, and they're not necessarily cheap. But this case, it's going to be a fetch land. It's going to be Misty Rainforest because with MH2, all of the enemy-colored fetch lands, so Misty, Scalding Tarn, Marsh Flats, Catacombs, they're all under $30 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you that don't know, these cards, especially Misty Rainforest and Scalding Tarn, used to be well over $100 for one single copy. You can now buy the playset, just the regular Modern Horizons 2, Misty Rainforest for around, so I guess it's around $30 for near mint.
Oh,
those are foil prices.
Are foil for $30.
Say the ones that I was looking at were around 22, 23. Yeah. So, I mean,
so you can get a playset and even pay for shipping and get them for less than one copy used to be.
Right. And the good thing about fetch lands or just lands in general is they're played in every format. You can play them in each of your EDH decks, regardless of color scheme, I think, if that's right. Like if you share the one color, you can play the fetch lands. Yeah. So, if you're playing Abzan, you can play a Misty Rainforest. If you're playing Mardu, you can play a Scalding Tarn. So you can play them in basically any deck. You want play sets for constructed events. You want singles for each of your EDH decks. So while my pick is just Misty Rainforest for this week, it kind of includes all of the, I'm going to say enemy fetch lands, because those ones are the newest printing and they're fairly cheap. I looked at like a Flooded Strand earlier today and it was upwards of 50, and Wooded Foothills was upwards of 40, so maybe lay off of those for a few weeks,
until
few months.
Until
their next reprint, which might be Modern Horizons 3. Who knows? But definitely look at the enemy fetch lands.
Yeah.
Because they are very cheap, and they probably won't stay that way for very long, at least for another 6 months until we get MH3. So.
Yeah. And, you can sort of see this price graph where they were at their highest. Let's go look at them on a year. So it looks like they have bottomed out and are curving back up.
Yep.
Looking on TCG Player now, they do give you a nice price history graph, and you can see that graph going down from the printing, and it wobbles a little bit, but now it's starting that trend back up.
Yep.
I think we called this. I think we called these on the cast maybe 2 months after Modern Horizons 2 came out.
Yeah.
And they definitely fell since then. And I will say the same thing that I always say. You can get them on the way down, or you can get them on the way up. If you know that card's a $100 card in the scheme of Magic, if you get it anywhere less than half that,
it's a good steal.
It's a good steal. So I'm a huge fan, and you're right. The biggest hindrance to most people in building modern decks is the mana base.
Yep.
Like, although right now it might be Modern Horizons 2. Like, if you want to play a 4 Solitude deck or a 4 Ragavan deck or a deck that has 4 Ragavans and 4 Solitudes, you're SOL.
Yep.
But But other than that, it's usually the mana base that keeps people from being able to build decks. So
I mean, if you think of Boomer Jund back in 2015, 2016, that was the most expensive deck, and it was mostly because of the lands, and then you had Termaglyphs and Lilianas, but it was
Bobs,
but it was mostly just the land base, and if lands are cheap right now, pick them up. If it's for EDH or Modern or Legacy, if it's maybe not Legacy because OG duels are expensive, but if you needed a fetch land for your 3 EDH decks and you needed the same one, buy a playset now because they're not going to stay this cheap in a year from now.
No, and they just came out in Modern Horizons 2. I don't think they're putting them in Modern Horizons 3. I don't think they're putting them in Double Masters 2.
Nope.
Which is it? Modern Horizons 3 is the Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
Right. So, and I don't see them putting them in Double Masters 2. So,
no.
Which that actually might be a fun discussion to have, which is what are they going to put? Like, what are the things we should be worried about them reprinting this year?
Yep.
But we'll get to that in another episode.
Absolutely.
Right on, man. Thank you for coming over.
No problem. Fun times.
As always, if you liked what you saw on YouTube and you want to listen to us on your ride to work, we're available as an audio podcast. And if you're listening to us as an audio podcast, feel free to jump onto YouTube, give us a like on there, and leave a comment. Let us know if you're enjoying what we're doing or what we can do to make this more valuable to you. And I'm going to try and keep this cat entertained.
See you guys later.
See ya.